Single I salute. I'm Lord Maitreya, the hip hop futurist. You're now tuned into the Super Longevity Institute podcast. This evening, I have a special guest. She is a devotee of the spiritual and theosophical teachings of Nicholas and Helena Roerich, a husband and wife duo of mystics, peace activists, and early social reformers who fled Russia in the 1920s. In her biography of the pair, The Spiritual Journey of Nicholas and Helena Roerich, The Spiritual Journey of Two Great Artists and Peacemakers, she recounts the lives and activities, teachings, and accomplishments of the Roeriches. She is an author, artist, life coach. She is a longtime student and practitioner of numerology, an ancient occult art that explores how numbers influence the personality and daily life. Her dedication and skills were recognized when she was appointed the official numerologist of Karnatia, India. She teaches at U.S. Community College. She is a co-creator of Cyber Number Pro, a numerology computer software program. Awarded the Excellence Healing Power of Art Competition Rural Entrepreneur of the Year Award nomination, Annual Author Award nomination. Ladies and gentlemen, hip hop futurists, transhumanists worldwide, introducing Ruth A. Drayer. It's a pleasure to have you
My
on.
pleasure.
Welcome to the Institute. Oh man, before we start, I want to show them a picture of the book, which is I love the cover art by the way. Okay. See that? That's a wonderful cover art. Um, Let me ask you, how did you come into contact with the art of Nicholas Roerich and Helena Roerich? How did you come into contact with them?
I'm dying to ask you, how did you come up with your name? But we'll
Oh,
get
you
next.
okay? Well, I'll tell you. Um, I worked at a bookstore at East West Books, and I was reading on theosophy and stuff like that. I was young and I was just trying to find my way. And I had a book in my hand, and some kids came in there. They were like in their 20s, early 20s, and I had I was always bald headed. I was back then. I even was more monk like, and I was sitting there reading, and it was like, oh, he thinks he's the Buddha. Maitreya. They was chanting Maitreya one. I thought at first I was like, I thought it was an insult, but then I realized I was like, wait a minute, they're calling me the Buddha. I might as well just take on the name, and that's how I got my name. That's how I
Well,
name.
that's what I keep wondering if your audience really knows what that name is. Maitreya is the coming Buddha.
They do actually. A lot of people in the hip hop world knows about Maitreya one. They know about Theosophy. Some of them know, at least the ones that I've come in contact with. They do know the. They what they don't. They might not know about is Nicholas Roerich. Now that's a deeper and Helena Roerich, and they might not know about the tradition of Theosophy and what it's about and stuff like that. And that's this is why I would love to talk about it. And this is a little for all your hip hoppers out there. Run DMC uh, preaches at the master apartments. Just keep that in mind as we go
Oh,
along. You'll
okay.
understand what we mean after we finish the show. Now, how did you come into contact with with their art, with theosophy? How did you what was your first contact with Nicholas Roerich and Helena Roerich?
I went. I lived in Santa Fe for a lot of years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm an artist. And I was in New York, and a friend from Santa Fe was in New York, and she said, "Let's go to the Rourke Museum." And I said, "Who?" I'd never heard of him. I've never seen art that's touched me so deeply.
Understand?
And I've seen a lot of art. I wonder, why don't people know about Rourke? Why see this unknown, amazing Russian artist? So then, this is the most interesting part of the story. I decided I'd learn as much as I could about him. And I went to visit a friend, and I was laying on her sofa, and waiting for her. And there was this huge bookcase right behind me. And I'm reading all the titles. And I get to the very top, and it's called Shambhala, which is where he and his wife wanted to go. And and it's the place where heaven and earth touch. And I got up, and the book was dedicated to Nicholas Roerich. I'm like, wow, this is not an accident.
Mm.
From then on, I just started collecting all the information I could, and lots of false information out there. And he and his wife went on an expedition for 4 years, and a lot of people think he died. He didn't die. He kept up, and so deciding what's real and what isn't. And then there was a book written by a man who was a PhD in some college, I've forgotten where, but he wrote an article that was called American Money and Russian Art. In that, he said Roerich was a shyster and a gyp. And I'm like, that was not, who could paint paintings like that and be all these things that man was saying? So the most amazing thing is Roerich was a theosophist, and he joined theosophy wherever they were. It's a club, or society, I guess is a better way to put it. And that was one of the things that this man said. Well, he belongs to all these different theosophy clubs. I mean, that's clearly he's a gypper. And but time went on, and I interviewed that man for my book. And by that time, he'd completely forgotten all that he'd written. And he said, "Was Roerich ever a theosophist?" He said, "I'm getting into theosophy right now."
Oh, he did a 360.
So he sent me all his research, which was pretty amazing. And people just, I collected information from so many places that, you know, I read my book just not long ago, and
Mm.
I said, where did I get all this information? I had to read the bibliography.
Wow. Wow. Can you tell my? All right. Let me just show them a picture of the section about him. Actually, something so amazing. You see,
Mhm.
that's such a beautiful. Did he paint this? He painted this, right?
He painted over 7,000 paintings.
That's a lot of paintings. Wow.
While crossing the desert
Wow.
and climbing mountains that were the highest mountains in the world, he still was painting.
Incredible. And can you give my audience a little bit of what's the time frame he was doing this? Because most people they weren't
Oh,
traveling in that area of the world when he and Helena was doing it. I was amazed. I was like the danger that they had, all the different terrain, and just how did they? That means
plus they were both over 50,
are you serious? That's incredible.
which was really old in those days.
Yeah, right, right. It's not like a fit. That's incredible. So when they was
Yeah.
going through the Chinese expedition in East Asia, they were in their 50s. That's incredible.
Yeah, and
That's
they were
incredible.
on yak back and horseback.
That's
And oh, only one time did they try cars, and they
that's
bogged down in the mud, and they couldn't get through, and they had to be hauled. And
wow,
and
wow.
he commented she had never been on a horse before that, but she was on it 24 hours a day and never complaining. They were amazing.
That's incredible. So they traveled through So they also traveled through the Himalayas.
Well, they wanted to,
Okay.
and they had permission to. They wanted to go to Tibet,
Wanted to go to Tibet.
and at that time, Tibet was not allowing anybody in. And they had permission, but they got held up there, and they never knew why. And I found out why for my book, because British secret files, the British had been watching every single thing they did and documenting it. And I figured out that the British secret files were just opened at that time. And I had a friend in England who, because that's where they were, the British secret files. And so he went and read them and sent me everything that was relevant. And that's how we knew why they were held up. They were there for 4 months. They were not allowed to get food. It was the middle of the winter. They had only summer tents. And
Wow.
they never knew why they didn't know that they were being accused of being spies.
Right, right.
The most amazing part is the guy that accused them of being spies, when they got from finished for their 4 month where they were in prison, so to speak, they went to his house
Wow.
because he was a friend and they had no idea. And you picture this, they never took their clothes off for 4 years, for 4 months in bitter cold, and
Wow.
animals were dying all around them because they didn't have food. And they went to his house. That
Wow.
blew my mind, really.
Wow. That amazes me. I mean, they did this in their 50s. This was probably like in their 20s that they were doing what they were traveling, right?
1924.
You'd be hard pressed to even travel like that now. Like you'd be hard pressed to travel in those terrains now. It'd be hard for us to do that now with all the technology that we have now. The the passion that Helena and Nicholas Roerich had is amazing. Just the passion for what they're doing was amazing. Uh, how did Nicholas Roerich develop his art style? Like how did he develop that? You think how did he come up with? How do you think he was that just a natural born talent? Like because
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I go into that in the book, but really, I think he just was an observer of nature.
Mm,
And he kind of romanticized it. His work has sort of a storybook book look to it. But
mm,
it was, he just was Rorik.
mm, mm. I have the book right here, by the way. Excellent book. Excellent book. Very well
Yeah,
researched. Just
very well researched.
very extremely well researched. Excellent book. I bought this at the museum of Nicholas Roerich. Um, I think that I had visited, and Russia Today came and interviewed me, and I decided to buy that book at that time. This was like a few years ago. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I don't know. Are they open now
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I should
from the
stop by there.
pandemic?
Yeah, I should. I'm not sure. You know what? But I'm curious. I will stop by there to find out. I'll let you know. Where's that? See, that's where.
Is
Where is
that
it?
you?
Yes. Yes. At the new Nicholas Roerich Museum. Um. Oh. So you went to India also, and met his son in India, right? What was that
Yes.
experience like? What was his son name again?
Svetosov.
Svetozar. Yeah. What was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, I had heard that. So when the Roriks came back from their expedition, they opened a research institute in Kulu Valley, India. And they had brought back all kinds of things to study. And it closed just at the beginning of World War II because no communication could get through.
Right.
And I had heard that they were opening it again. And I felt like I needed to be there. And I told my mother, I don't know, you know, I don't know what I'm doing with my life anyway, but I can't imagine anything more important than being around people who are studying art and weather and peace, world peace, and my mom who was sick and very fragile and very careful with her money.
Mm.
I'm going to give you the money to go.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
didn't know that I'd ever come back. I thought I was going to be there forever.
Wow. Oh, wow. That was a monumental trip for you. Going to that.
It
Wow.
was.
Wow. How long were you there?
I was just there about a year.
Wow.
But I went to India thinking I was moving there. I wasn't a tourist. And that makes it really different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got really sick and came back and
Mm.
never thought I'd come back to the US again.
Mm. You want to get that? You can get that real quick if you want. Wow. Amazing.
Wait, I'll just turn the volume
Okay.
off. Oops, didn't do it. I'll call you right back.
Um. Yeah. It's funny
What
because.
I want to tell you,
Mm,
I love this. This is my favorite conversation in the whole world.
Mine's too. I'm enjoying this. By the way.
15 years I worked on that book.
Wow.
I feel like it was my life job.
Wow.
I love talking about it.
It shows. The book is amazing. Book. Amazing book.
Yeah,
Um. Who was Yuri Gargarian? I think I said his name right. I'm always chopping people's name up. He said something
he was
about
a
the
Russian
world's pain.
cosmonaut.
He was a Russian who?
Cosmonaut.
He was a Russian cosmonaut. Yeah.
And when he got out in space, he said the world looks like a Nicholas Roy painting.
Wow. That's saying a lot. That's saying,
Yeah,
and you know what? Looking at his paintings, I'm not surprised.
yeah.
I'm not surprised at all. He's one of the best oil paintings I've ever seen. That's for sure.
He didn't paint in oil. He painted in pastel
Estelle. Thank you for correcting me.
because he said oil darkens with time and pastel
Mm,
lightens with time.
mm. Interesting. Thank you. Wow.
There's a picture in my book that I love.
Mm,
It's they're way up in by Tibet
mm,
and sending. They've crated up a whole bunch of his art and they're sending it back, and it's on Black and
wow.
the UPS of the time. And they're these crated paintings down.
Wow. Can I ask you something? What is your favorite Nicholas Roerich painting? Do you have a favorite? I have a favorite. I have a few favorites. I say
I
like
have
one
a
and then I
few
say
favorites,
yeah.
but I don't remember their names.
That's okay.
I've seen so many, but I can't think of their
That's
names.
okay. Can I show you one of mine?
Sure.
I love this. R
Well,
has
that was part of a series where he was painting all the most sacred beings, and I think that's Maitreya, right?
it's supposed to be, yeah. Definitely yes. I love that painting. And can you tell me all right, can you tell me a little bit more about Theosophy? Who started it? It was another Russian lady, right?
Helena Blavatsky.
Let me show you a picture. Let me show my audience a picture of her. She's very unique. She traveled extensively too. And first off, not many men were traveling in those in Central Asia like she was. So
That's right.
she was an incredible woman.
She was.
Yes. So yeah.
And they
And
were distantly related.
who's related?
He, her and Nicholas Rourke.
You mean fam? They were family?
Very far apart, but yeah, they were family.
That makes sense though, cause he really was. He really was. They were Helena Rorik and Nicholas Rorik was very inspired by Helen Blavatsky.
Yeah.
They was very inspired by her, and so wow, that's amazing. I didn't even know that. Wow.
See, what she said about theosophy is that in there's only one religion, but it has to have all these different names and faces because there's so many different people. But the root of it is the same. And she had found, which I always wished I could find, some sacred writings that I think they're the something of Dizan,
Mm.
and that's how she knew that it all was from one root, which is of course true, but that's what theosophy is founded on.
Now, mind you, this was like at the turn of the century. They were talking like this. They were far advanced. This is not like, you know, today we say that and we're like, yeah, 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 it's all one thing. This is in the early 1900s. That's what they was
No,
saying.
the
The
1800s.
18. Oh, thanks for that correction. The 1800s. Who was saying? Who was thinking like this?
Oh, a lot of people.
No, I mean, but the theosophy movement. There weren't many. I mean, I don't think that was that idea that we all religions are all connected and it all comes from the same place. I don't think that was too prevalent. Not here in the United States. I don't think that idea was too prevalent in the United States in the early 1800s. That to me, that's an advanced idea to
Well,
have
that was one of
in
the
that
things
time.
Rory wanted to do. He wanted to prove the migration routes of people around the world. And
What?
what he wanted to prove was that they all started in Russia and came from the same place and then just spread out. You know, now they know that we started in Africa.
Right, right.
He wanted it to be Russia.
Wow. He was up for a Nobel Peace Prize too, right?
Hmm.
That's crazy.
No, he was nominated.
Nominated
He didn't. Mhm.
for a Nobel Peace Prize. Wow.
You're great.
Wow. I'm blown away. You're great. I'm blown away. I'm so
How old are
glad that
you?
I'm so glad that you came on. I was so excited. I was like, because I had this book for so long. I was just like, wow. Now I get to talk to the author.
I love
I
it.
was
Thank
excited.
you.
Um. Wow. You know what? This is a fun little fact. I was on in the internet and a Nicholas Roerich painting sold in Russia. It was the largest selling. It was the largest sum of money given to any artist ever in Russian history.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
On,
I was
yeah,
like,
they did it on auction.
yeah, I
Yes,
couldn't
which
believe it.
makes a difference. And he barely got any money out of
Yeah,
his paintings.
yeah, I know. That's why I was so happy. I was like, yeah. When I see that, my Russian friend was, my coworker. She's Russian, real cool. I said, you know that Nicholas Roach painted just sold for this amount of money. She was like, "Maitreya, please, whatever." I said, "No, you don't understand." I said,
Yeah,
"Trust
when
me."
I was in New York the last time, I went to the auction house
Are you?
and met those people, and they were all like, "Oh my gosh, you wrote the book about Rourke," and it was really fun.
Oh
And
wow.
but there's a really wealthy Russian man who collected all of Rourke, prints of Rourke's work all over the world, and it's 3 volumes, this big. I mean, you get tired of looking at them. There's so many.
I would love to own an original piece, but there's two things that I want to do. I want to own an original piece from Nicholas Roerich, and I would love to live in the master apartments. I would love to live in the master apartments. I would definitely. This is. Let me show my audience what the master apartments look like. It's an old
Yeah.
Arco Deco building, right?
It's the first skyscraper in New York.
I'm done. I didn't even
And
know
up
that.
at the very top, there was like a little secret room that nobody could go into. And Rourke and his followers, they had a secret society and they met in that room. And I got to go up there,
What?
walk. The elevator just goes, I think, 24 floors, and then you get out and you walk up another 3. And they weren't even painted. The walls were dirty like the rest of the place. But you know what? I went up there and realized where I was putting my hand, the Rourkes had put their hands.
Right. Wow. What's it called? The meditation room, by the way. Why is it called the meditation room? Because
It
it's
had
called
a,
the. Mhm.
because their secret organization is called Agni Yoga.
What is Agni Yoga?
Agni Yoga is the yoga of fire.
Mm.
And his wife, Helena Rourke, wrote tons of books of Agni Yoga. He was the painter and she was the writer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I gotta
And
check that out.
really, he she was the really heavy duty spiritual woman behind him.
Right. Right.
But because of Helena Blavatsky and how poorly she'd been treated, and the press had made fun of her and done all kinds of things, so they didn't want Helena Rourke to go through any of that. So she was very sheltered, and Nicholas got all the attention because of all his paintings.
Wow. I want to show
You're
it to the
so much
audience.
fun to talk to. Thank
This is
you.
amazing. This is amazing. I can't believe it. This is amazing. I'm gonna take a picture of Helena Roerick. Yes, sir.
So I'll
This is.
tell you about their name.
Oh,
It's pronounced in Russia. It's pronounced Rare,
Roerick.
mm-hmm. But we say Rorik, and actually it's Latvian. It's not even a Russian name
Really?
because his father was born in Riga, Latvia.
Can I ask you a quick question? What is
Sure.
this? What is this little chest right here? That's right by Helena Roerick. What is this little like casket right here?
Oh, well, that's not just a little chest. That's got the. Apparently, there was a rock. Um, Gee, I can't think of it. That came from another planet, and whoever had that rock, um, governments had it. It lifted consciousness.
Wow.
So Madame Rourke was given it. In fact, I read somewhere, and I'm sure it's in my book, that somebody came and knocked at the door of the hotel they were staying in New York and gave them this package. And they threw it under the bed because they were going to dinner. And when they came back, they opened it up and it was, oh, it's called the Chintamani stone.
Wow.
That was in it. So when she, you know, we're in the time of women now.
Mm.
I mean, you can see women everywhere doing everything.
You know what? That's true. That's a fact.
She was the first. Uh-huh.
Hmm. Wow. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I love this painting of her. It's beautiful. Did Nicholas Roerich paint this?
No, that's the funniest thing to me. He never painted people. His son was the portrait guy,
That's right. I remember that.
Svetosov.
That's right.
But he said, "What man is unimportant. We only need to capture nature and mountains." So meanwhile, here's his son who paints portraits.
Wow.
And I always wondered how that felt for Svetosov to have his dad saying your work's not important.
Wow. Oh, that's. Let me ask you, Miss Drea, where is where is this casket? I think I'm saying that right. Now, where is it now? Because it seems like it's. I know that it has to be some importance of why this is here, and I love this flower on her. This looks so.
Mhm.
This it looks. This is a powerful picture. Whoever painted this, they did a
Yeah,
very good job. Very good
where
job.
is it
I wonder
now?
who
I don't know.
Mm,
I don't think it's at the Rourke Museum. And
wow.
they had she had a maid. Well, she was a secretary, and her name was Mary. And while the Rourkes were still alive, she was stealing from them.
What?
And after they were dead, because they lived to be quite old,
Yeah, they did. They sure did.
after they were dead, then she got sued, and she had taken a lot of Madame Rourke's expensive, uh, what is it that women in India wear? Saris.
Ah,
She
yeah, sorry, yeah,
and some of them are gorgeous
yes,
with
they're
gold
beautiful.
and everything.
Yeah,
And she had taken a lot of saris and stolen a lot of things. There was a big court case. You know who used to tell me all this and was the former director of the Rourke Museum? His name was Daniel Enton.
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And he's passed on
I
now,
know.
but
I was brokenhearted because I wanted to meet them. I wanted to meet him and his and a wife. I wanted to, yeah, I wanted to meet them. They seem like they just seem very interesting.
yeah.
they, you know,
Well, the man who's the director now, um, I just noticed my cat in the corner.
that's not. I love it. She's watching too. Or is it a girl?
No, it's a girl.
Okay, she's watching.
And the man who who's director now was the one who put together all the paintings so that you could see any group at what age what year they were painted and all the titles. He did all that.
Wow, amazing. I need to meet him. I need to bring him on the show with you. We need to have like a
Yeah,
we need to have like a virtual
yeah.
chat with all of us talking. That's what I want to set up. I want to
Well,
set
what
that.
I want,
Mm.
and I've wanted forever, I want my book to be a movie or a portion.
Wait a minute. I was gonna, it should be a. You know what? I was thinking that when I was today. I said, why is this not a movie? Why is this
Well,
not a
it's too
movie?
big for one thing.
Mm,
Can't make a movie that unless they do a series.
a
But
series would be great.
so many interesting segments of his life that any one of them, and the whole time I was writing, I kept saying, I don't know if I can finish this, but I know if I do, it's going to be a movie.
It should be. This will be amazing. This will be amazing. Amazing story. Amazing. They should read this book. They should be a series or a movie. I hope somebody who's watching this go get this. Go get the book, please. Um, let me see. Oh, let me show you something else. I have some of your art too. That's amazing. I love your art too.
You know, you haven't told what the Master Institute is yet.
I know I'm getting to it. I have all my questions written down. I was just free flowing because we just having. Sometimes I have all this thing prepared, but we just vibing so good.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to look at my questions, but trust me, I have it all. I'm definitely going to speak about that. That's very important. Um,
Yeah.
this is when I
Yeah,
thought the that chest was in, and this is the cornerstone, the laying of the cornerstone of the master apartments, which was the Arco Deco building that was built for Nicholas Roerich in his honor. But all right, and this is the laying of the
yeah, and there's
cornerstone.
some things in there
Hmm.
that someday they'll open up. I don't know, maybe in another 100 years or something, they'll
Yeah,
open up, see what they put in that
I'm
corner.
curious. I'm curious. I want to know. I would love to know what's in that. That was so important. I really do because I really think they were on to something. A lot of good things. They were on to something. They were definitely on to
Oh,
something.
absolutely.
They were definitely on to something. That's why I want to. I'm gonna move in this apartment building. Watch.
Okay.
I wish I could move into the same place. I wish I had so much money that I could live in the same place Roridge lived in the master apartments at the time. I
Well, when
wish.
I was up there, I met a woman who had rented an apartment when she was young. She lived in the neighborhood. Her
Mm-hmm.
parents lived around, and this was her first apartment. So she rented an apartment, and in time, she rented the one next to it. So she had a much bigger apartment, but she was still there, and she knew so much stuff and could tell you anything.
Really? Wow. Wow. And because another thing that astounded me is that the windows were in L shaped. They were like at right angles. They were the first to have L shaped windows
Yeah.
in the apartment building. I was like, man, the history. It's a landmark now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's great. That means it'll be preserved. And speaking of the preservation of art, he had something called the Nicholas Roerich Pact, right?
The Pact of Peace.
The Pact of Peace. Wow.
Because he believed that art belonged to everybody and that it needed to be protected because it was the highest contribution, art is the highest contribution to a society, which scared me a lot with this last administration
Wow.
because we were not promoting art or music or anything. But
Yeah.
thank goodness he's out. And I asked you not to talk about
That's
politics.
okay. I'm not gonna indulge too much. But I do believe that. See, so who's the Nicholas Roerich? The Pact of Peace was a pact that other governments and world leaders signed, right? Saying that
Yeah, but see, the problem was they were all from Latin America, from Europe, and that's where all the places were being bombed and destroyed. And
so if this was a pact to say that you can't touch the art during war, something like that. Am I saying this correctly?
they had a flag, and that's the symbol of those three balls. Uh-huh.
Mm.
But it's a flag, and it's in a magenta circle. It's three balls, like you'd see in a pawn shop or something, and
Mm.
sign of Chintamani. And so if you saw that, they called that the flag of the Red Cross of art. If you saw that flying, then you were not to bomb that because it's some precious art in it.
Wow. Amazing. He was on another level. He was on another level. Um,
That's the book I sent you, that
mm,
private
yeah,
that was about the banner of peace.
the banner of peace. Wow, amazing. They were on another level. I'm glad you know what, sometimes in life, I always say, my journey has been amazing. This has been an amazing journey because every time I feel like I'm on course, I'm really off course. I'm really on course. I learned about the Nicholas Roerich Pact as a youngster. And it just amazed me. The Pact of Peace, it amazed me. And now I'm talking to you. It just amazed me that as you go through life, if you stay on your path, you'll find other people that you can learn from, and you'll get more information, and that'll help you grow. And
Well, I'll blow your mind and tell you and remind you that I'm also a numerologist.
I, yes.
Numerology lays out the whole blueprint of your life. As
Mm,
soon as you get named, the whole blueprint of your life gets laid out.
really?
So there's no accidents at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because this is my Maitreya one is my real, like I officialized it. It's really my name now. Like it's on my birth certificate. So, I really
Oh,
take it.
wow.
Yeah, I took it to heart, and you know, so it definitely, I feel like it's definitely guided me in the right direction. To where I'm at today. It's definitely guided me. That's for sure. Um, can you tell me? So, how does your numerology work? Like, how does how do you how do
Letter in the
individuals?
alphabet has a number.
Mhm.
A is a 1, B is a 2, C is a 3, E is a 4, and it lays out. So it goes A to I,
Mhm.
which is 1 to 9, and then it goes back J to R, which is 1 to 9, and then it goes S to Z, which is 1 to 8. And every number, every letter carries its placement. And so you just add, and then you reduce things down to between 1 and 9.
Mm,
And it lays out your whole blueprint.
mm.
It took me years before I believed that, but I really believe it now. And
Mm,
so what that means is, as soon as you are born, your whole life plan is spun out.
mm. It's interesting.
So you can go, gee, why did this happen?
Right.
Well, it was planned.
Mm,
And I think on some level, we agreed to it.
right. Right.
So why did this happen? Well, you were ready. You were old enough to deal with this problem or this challenge. And then it came up because it tells a lot about your karma, your
Mm,
past lives.
mm. Interesting. Um. Very interesting.
So I happen to have a good book out
Oh, on numerology.
called Numerology, the Power in Numbers.
Oh, I'm gonna put that link in the description. The book about numerology. I don't have a picture of it, but I will put it in the description. If anybody's interested in reading any of her books, they will all be underneath the description. I also will have her video that she talked about with these words and her words on YouTube. I definitely put that all in the description. So if anyone's interested, I'll
And
put that
it's
in there.
available through Amazon.
Available through Amazon. Wonderful,
Both of my books are.
wonderful. Mm, oh, I gotta get this. These people are amazing. Every time I get, the Roerich plan was to form a country where all Tibetan Buddhists could practice their beliefs in safety. What was this?
See, that's the one
What was this plan to achieve this?
unexplainable thing.
That was an ambitious endeavor, right?
Well, the Roricks worked in cooperation with what's called the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Masters that are higher beings who've already finished their karma and they're back helping us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, um, gee, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay. We'll
What
come back. That's fine. You said that they were going to higher beings, and that they were guided by higher beings that got rid of their
he
karma.
worked with, he worked with Master Moria,
Master
who was
Moria.
the masters,
Mm-hmm.
and they They had told him that his job was to go and start this organization or start a country in Mongolia, but Mongolia was already owned.
Right.
It was available for him to go start a country. And that's a fascinating story. But when I wrote my book, I interviewed a lot of people, people who'd known him. And this one woman from a very reliable source thought that after 4 years that they were frozen at the top of the world and without food, and the, that he really wasn't so great in his head anymore. But he always had been a visionary to begin with.
Right.
So, you know, painting all those paintings, he lived on a lot of different levels.
Wow. It's also rumored. Do you know the brother, Dr. Hieronymus from Baltimore? Okay, you gotta send me some. Oh, I gotta send you some stuff on him. Dr. Hieronymus. Shout out
And
to Dr.
I was
Hieronymus.
born in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to touch on. You was born in. I lived in D.C. also. D.C. is a
I
very special
spread
place
that.
for me.
Yeah,
Washington D.C. is an extremely special place for me. And I seen it. I was like, wow, she's lived in D.C. I was like, wow, interesting, because they're not a state, and I always, when I was younger, I lived there, and I always was like, why they're not a state? They don't live in a state. And
where'd you live?
I lived in Northwest in a homie place in D.C., not far from I think it's Ben's Chili, right by U Street, not far from U Street. But
I lived in the Northwest down the street from Walter Reed.
wow, wow, wow. I love DC, by the way. I love DC. Um, what it was rumored that Nicholas Roerich had something to do with the reverse of the United States seal. That always astonished me. That by how did is there any truth to that? Dr. Bob Hieronymus, who's the only living historian on the reverse of the seal, by the way, by the United States government. He's the only living historian on the reverse of the seal. He knows everything about the reverse of the seal, and he told me that Nicholas Roerich influenced Wallace at the time to tell FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, to put that symbol on the reverse of the United States. So I was blown away. I was blown away. Is there any
I
truth to
don't
that?
know about the reverse. It was that where it says "In God We Trust."
Mm,
That
mm.
was Rourke's contribution. But although people say that, I've never found it in Rourke's writing.
Yeah, that's what. Right, right, right. Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you. I was like, because I looked in the book, and there was nothing on it in the book also, and so I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm gonna still run it by you, because Bob Hieronymus is very legitimate person. He knows a lot about the reverse of the ceiling. He worked with the government. He worked with the United States government to put out more information. Because of his questioning, they put out more information about this the story of the reverse of the seal. So I was like, wow, all right. Let's see. Oh, tell me about the Master School of the United Arts in New York.
Well, Rourke believed that all the arts were important. To be a full person, you needed to be able to sing and dance and write music and plays and anything, drama. I mean, it all put together. So that was what he taught. He taught they had a school. It was very small, but its plan was to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they taught art there and music and
Wow. Um,
Yeah, I'd love to have been part of all that.
Me too. This was like in the 30s or the 20s?
Uh, yeah,
30s,
in the 20s.
the 20s. Wow. I'm gonna go back to Victorian. In what way was Helena Warwick a pioneering feminist?
She was the she had the Chintamani stone,
Mm,
which raised consciousness. She was the first one to
mm,
say really important
mm. Okay.
for women's lib or anything. I
Mm,
mean, you're young enough that I don't know that you know there was a time when women's lib told women they're important. Before
mm.
that, we all thought we were unimportant.
Right, right, right. Wow,
So she was right up there in holding the light for us.
wow. Um, can I show some of your paintings now? I want to show this one.
Yeah,
This is called the. I love this. It's, what is it called? The
the
Kraken.
crack in the cosmic egg.
Wow, it's beautiful. Do you have that hanging anywhere? Yeah. This is nice.
Well, I have prints. It
Hmm.
was sold a long time ago, but it's the only painting I ever did in one day.
Wow.
Just it at night and said, I don't know what else to do. And it's just been so popular. And I sell prints of my work for $50.
Beautiful.
But that's one of the most amazing paintings. And really, I came up with that name. And when I researched it the next day, it was some way back in history, the crack in the cosmic egg, and it was blue and orange and white.
Wow.
What I tapped into, but that's the result.
Wow. There's some synchronicity going on
Yeah,
there.
and
That
you
was
can turn
beautiful.
it any way and it works just fine.
Wow. Let me show another one of your paintings. Beautiful. I love this too.
That's a real favorite of mine.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I love this.
Mhm.
What is it called? This is
What'd
beautiful.
you say?
What is it called? The viewing the world. Is it called?
Yeah, somebody viewing the world up at the top where it looks like there's a figure up there viewing the world.
Mm. Wow. Wow. How long you been painting?
Well, it started after I researched my Rorik book.
Mm.
I was a sculptor before then, and I said, I'll never paint, it's too flat.
Wow.
But I just developed this love of color from working with him, and that's
Wow.
what work is, it's color.
I see another book.
Yeah, that was the book before the Theosophical Society got it.
Wow.
Published that with a friend,
Wow.
and then sold it to the Theosophical Society,
Wow.
and they changed the name.
Wow. If this was,
But
if,
painting.
wow. Wow. Well, thanks for this. This was wonderful. I enjoyed this. We have to do this again. I'm gonna be in
Okay.
contact with the director of the Nicholas Roerich Museum, and we're gonna all have a powwow. We're gonna all talk. We're gonna all talk and do Rorick and Helena Rorick. It'll be fun. I want to learn some more stuff. This is
Oh,
definitely
good.
not going to be the end of it. I enjoyed this. This is different from usually. Sometimes you just want to take a break and talk about art. You don't want to talk about something.
When that's a great place to take a break. You just go to
Yeah.
the it's roar.org and you just see tons of paintings.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, is there anything you want to say to my audience before we leave? Any wisdom you want to drop on us? Anything you want to drop on us before we leave?
Well, I just want to thank you for all this wonderful interview because it's made me so happy.
Well, thank you. It made me happy as well. And I'm gonna as soon as this week I'm gonna figure out how to get in contact with the director of Nicholas Roerich Museum.
Roar.org.
York.org. Okay. Well, I had a wonderful time with Miss Ruth Dreher. I enjoyed her book.
Me
I'm gonna
too.
put all her books underneath the description so you can get it if you're interested. Um, Peace and love.
And my website,
Yes. Please tell us your website. I'll definitely put that.
www.ruthdrayer,
www.roofdreher.com.
is my art. And then there's www.cybernumbers, which is all about numerology.
Oh, wonderful. I will put all of that information in the description, y'all. Peace and
Thank you.
love. Thank you, Miss Dreher. You've been wonderful. A wonderful guest. We'll have you back on.
Thank you so much, my Dre.